Chapter 4. The Price of Loyalty. The night air was thick with tension as Rian, Lila and Rourke's team edged closer to the central tower. The looming spire, wrapped in glass and steel, reflected the neon hues of Skyhold, giving it a cold, indifferent beauty. For a moment, Rian paused, staring up at the monolith, feeling the weight of the city pressing down on him. This was it, the heart of Concord, and the place where everything could go horribly wrong. "We'll go in through the maintenance shaft," Lila whispered, pointing toward a hidden entry she knew from her days as an engineer. "It'll take us directly to the lower levels, where the mainframe is located." Rourke gave her a sharp nod, motioning for his men to take position. The team slipped into the shadows, moving with military precision, though there was an unmistakable aura of tension among them. Rian couldn't shake the feeling that this alliance was hanging by a thread, ready to snap at the slightest misstep. As they approached the shaft, Rian felt a familiar presence nearby, his instincts prickling with unease. Zeke. His old friend was closer than before, leading the patrols with the same sense of duty that had once bound them together. Lila quickly unlocked the maintenance hatch, her fingers working with the ease of someone who knew Concord's systems inside and out. The hatch hissed open, and Rourke's men disappeared inside without a word. Before following, Rian glanced at Rourke, whose smile seemed a little too eager. Rourke had never been one for subtlety, and his excitement about this mission, about the power they were walking into, was impossible to ignore. The team entered the dark, narrow tunnel, the sound of their footsteps muffled against the metal walls. Lila led the way, her eyes sharp as she navigated the twisting corridors. Every step felt heavier as they drew closer to the mainframe. "We'll split into 2 teams," Rourke whispered once they reached a fork in the tunnel. "You take half the men, Vale, and head to the primary server room. I'll take the rest to the control center." Rian hesitated. Splitting up now seemed like a dangerous move. Why split up? "We need to stay together if we're going to pull this off." Rourke's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Trust me, Vale. If things go south, having 2 teams increases our chances of success. Besides, you'll need backup when you reach the server room. It's where the mainframe's core is stored." Rian clenched his jaw but nodded. They were in too deep to argue, and any more delay would only increase the chances of Concord detecting them. He motioned for half of Rourke's men to follow him, while the others stayed with Rourke. Lila stayed by Rian's side, her face set in determination, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "Be careful, Rian. I don't trust Rourke. He's planning something." "I know," Rian whispered back. "Stay close. We'll get through this." As Rian's team neared the server room, the narrow tunnel opened up into a cavernous chamber filled with whirring machines and rows of glowing screens. This was the heart of the EYES system, the place where Concord's data, surveillance, and control mechanisms all converged. Lila moved quickly to one of the consoles, plugging in the chip. Her fingers danced across the keys as she worked to bypass the system's security protocols. The room hummed with energy, the lights flickering as the data streamed through. "We don't have much time," Lila muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Once I access the mainframe, Concord will know we're here." Rian's eyes scanned the room, his muscles tensing as he waited for the inevitable. Something felt wrong. Too easy, too quiet. He could feel the tension in the air, like a storm about to break. Suddenly a faint echo reverberated through the chamber, the sound of boots. Rian's heart sank. "Get ready!" he hissed, drawing his weapon as the footsteps grew louder. His team took cover, their weapons trained on the door. It slid open with a hiss, revealing a figure that Rian both dreaded and longed to see. Zeke. His old friend stepped through the doorway, his black Concord uniform pristine, his face unreadable behind the helmet. His weapon was raised, though he hadn't fired. Behind him, a squad of enforcers spread out, their visors gleaming under the cold fluorescent lights. "Rian," Zeke said, his voice calm, though there was a hardness to it. "I knew you'd come here." Rian stepped forward, keeping his weapon lowered but ready. His heart ached at the sight of Zeke, the boy he had grown up with, now a soldier of the regime he had come to despise. "It doesn't have to end like this," Rian said, his voice steady, though his emotions churned inside. "You don't know what Concord's planning. The Eye. It's not just surveillance, it's mind control, Zeke. They'll turn everyone in Skyhold into puppets." Zeke's eyes flickered with something, hesitation perhaps, but then his expression hardened again. "You think I don't know that? You think Concord hasn't told me the price of peace? But it's the only way, Rian. Without control, this city will tear itself apart." Ryan's grip tightened on his weapon. "You've become everything we fought against, Zeke. You're defending a system that will strip people of their freedom, their will. How can you still believe this is the right thing?" Zeke's eyes burned with conviction. "Because I believe in the greater good. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Sacrifice. It was the justification that had torn them apart before, and now it was the wedge that would decide their fate. Before Rian could respond, a series of explosions echoed from deeper within the facility. The lights flickered violently, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Rourke. Ryan's blood ran cold as he realized what had happened. Rourke hadn't just planned to shut down the Eye, he had planned to destroy the entire facility, likely wiping out anyone inside, including Concord's soldiers, his own men, and them. Lila's voice cut through the chaos. "Rian, we've been double-crossed. Rourke's set explosives throughout the building. He's planning to wipe everything out, us included." Zeke's eyes widened as the implications hit him. He looked at Rian, the cold certainty in his gaze crumbling into something like desperation. "You knew about this?" "No," Rian said, shaking his head. "This isn't my plan. Rourke's gone rogue. We need to get out of here before this whole place goes up." But it was too late. The explosions were spreading, and the walls trembled as more charges detonated. The enforcers moved into action, their weapons trained on Rian and his team. Chaos erupted in the room as both sides exchanged fire. Lila ducked behind cover, working frantically to extract the data from the mainframe as the gunfight raged around her. "I need more time!" she shouted, her fingers flying over the keys. Rian fired at the advancing enforcers, his heart pounding as he tried to figure out a way to salvage the situation. Zeke was trapped between his loyalty to Concord and the reality of the betrayal they were both facing. "Zeke!" Rian shouted over the din. "This isn't what either of us wanted. You know Rourke won't stop until he takes over Skyhold. Help me stop him. We can still make things right." For a moment, Zeke hesitated, his weapon lowering slightly. It was the first crack in his armor of loyalty, the first sign that perhaps, somewhere beneath the layers of obedience, the friend Rian had once known still existed. But then, with a look of grim determination, Zeke raised his weapon again. "I can't, Rian. I won't betray Concord." The words were like a knife to Ryan's heart. Before he could respond, another explosion rocked the building, and the ceiling above them began to collapse. Debris rained down, and Rian could hear the screams of men being crushed under the weight of falling metal. In that instant, Zeke made his decision. He turned and ran toward the exit, his soldiers following him in retreat as the facility began to tear itself apart. Rian's heart ached as he watched Zeke disappear into the smoke. His oldest friend was lost to him, perhaps forever. But there was no time to mourn. Lila screamed as the server room began to crumble around them. "Rian, we need to go. Now!" Rian grabbed Lila's arm and pulled her away from the console, the data transfer incomplete. They raced toward the exit, dodging falling debris and explosions that shook the very ground beneath their feet. As they reached the maintenance shaft, Ryan caught sight of Rourke, standing on a platform above them, a smirk plastered on his face. "Enjoy the show, Vale?" Rourke called, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "I told you there's only one way to take down Concord, and that's to burn them to the ground." Rian's blood boiled with rage. Rourke had betrayed them all, and now the entire city was at risk. He wasn't here to save Skyhold, he was here to rule it, no matter the cost. With a roar of anger, Ryan fired his weapon at Rourke, but the leader of the rebellion was already disappearing into the smoke, leaving chaos in his wake. As the building collapsed around them, Ryan and Lila barely made it out, stumbling into the streets of Sector 1 as the central tower crumbled into a smoldering ruin behind them. Skyhold was on the brink of war, and everything Ryan had fought for was falling apart. His friend was now his enemy, and the man he had allied with had become the greatest threat of all. But one thing was clear, the battle for Skyhold had only just begun.